How did your family frame you for a crime? My father required me to seduce and marry elderly men in nursing homes every few months so we could inherit their money when they died, because old people are going to die anyway. Might as well make them useful. My father had been running inheritance scams for years before I was born, but he realized that having a young, attractive daughter would make his schemes much more effective. He homeschooled me specifically to keep me isolated from anyone who might interfere with his plans, and moved us constantly so I could never form relationships or get help from outside sources. Dad controlled every aspect of my life, including my appearance, my wardrobe, and even my speech patterns, because he said I was his most valuable business asset. He kept all my identification documents locked away and reminded me daily that I had no legal existence without him, since he'd never officially registered my birth. My mother had died having me, so he said I had to pay him back for taking her. Dad had already used me in smaller cons throughout my childhood, teaching me to manipulate lonely older people for money, and he made it clear that refusing to participate would result in him abandoning me with no way to survive on my own. When I was 16, Dad suddenly announced that I was ready for advanced operations, and dragged me to an upscale nursing home where he pointed out a frail elderly man in a wheelchair. "That's going to be your new husband," he whispered. He demanded I approach the confused old man while he coached me through an earpiece. "You're going to make that old man fall in love with you, marry him, and then help him die peacefully so we can inherit his fortune," Dad hissed as the man smiled at me with genuine warmth. When I froze in horror, Dad snarled, "You think you're too good to make easy money off some dying geezer?" I was horrified and refused to participate in Dad's scheme, which made him absolutely furious because he claimed I was throwing away millions of dollars out of selfishness. He locked me in our basement and began withholding food to weaken my resistance, dragging me to the nursing home 3 times a week where I was forced to sit with Harold, the elderly man who genuinely believed I was interested in him romantically. Harold would light up every time I walked into his room, telling me stories about his late wife and showing me old photographs that broke my heart. Dad would watch from the hallway and signal me to move closer, hold Harold's hand, or laugh at his jokes while the poor man had no idea he was being manipulated. Harold started asking the nurses about me constantly and began giving me small gifts from his room, including his late wife's jewelry that he wanted me to have because "you remind me of her when she was young." And then to my horror, Harold tearfully proposed to me with his deceased wife's engagement ring, believing our connection was real. Dad immediately said yes on my behalf. He grabbed my face afterward and screamed, "That senile old fool just handed us a fortune and you're acting like it's a tragedy." When I said I couldn't marry him, Dad said something that made my blood run cold. "Don't worry, you won't have to put up with him for much longer." I couldn't let Dad force me to marry and potentially kill an innocent old man, so I started planning my escape from his control. I secretly stole money from Dad's wallet and hid it in my room so I could run away before the wedding. For 2 weeks, I pretended to go along with his plan while secretly researching how to get legal identification and find help for abuse victims. I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in years, knowing that I might be able to escape before Dad made me into a murderer. I even tried leaving coded messages with nursing home staff about my situation, hoping someone would realize I was being forced into this marriage against my will. But Dad discovered the money hidden in my room and went nuclear. He told Harold we had to move up the wedding immediately because I was sick and needed health insurance, and Harold immediately said he'd do anything for me. Dad held a knife to my ribs during the entire ceremony and whispered, "If you don't say I do, I'll gut you right here in front of everyone." After the ceremony, he moved Harold out of the nursing room and into our house so his devoted new wife could care for him. He hired a corrupt nurse who helped him increase the man's medication to dangerous levels while forcing me to watch. He said, "This is what happens when you try to run away from family business. Now you're an accessory to murder." Within days, Harold was dead. It was the most awful day of my life. I couldn't believe what my father had done to this innocent old man who trusted us both. Dad immediately began the inheritance process while threatening to frame me for his death if I ever tried to leave. But then something amazing happened. Dad had picked Harold because he had no close family, but he did have an estranged nephew who showed up unexpectedly to contest the will, and immediately recognized that something was wrong with our marriage. When he confronted me privately, I broke down and confessed everything about Dad's scheme and how I had been forced to participate. I told him what my father had done to Harold made me sick and begged him to help me. The nephew went straight to the police, who launched an investigation that revealed Dad's entire inheritance scam operation. Dad tried to convince authorities that I had been the mastermind and he was just an innocent father manipulated by his criminal daughter, but the evidence showed years of abuse and coercion. He was arrested for elder abuse, fraud, and murder. I'm 21 now and living under a new identity, finally free from Dad's control.